One of the great pitfalls in discourse is how language conditions us without our awareness that it's happening. It's something weaponized, often politically, against underclasses. But I'm not really sure it's intentionally weaponized. Tough to use that wording. How we talk is powerful. It's filled with power, and the way we work through problems is itself the biggest problem of our time. Take the question of how a person might achieve work-life balance. You'll hear people with careers in white-collar jobs talk about this, how they are working to take these two parts of their lives and figure out how to have just the right amount of each. The question itself creates the framing of answers that always work within a system denoted, because baked into it is an idea that work and life aren't the same thing, that you are not always in life or not always in work. The relationship between the two isn't the question here. The question should be, what the hell is work? What the hell is life? You see this when people talk about, should we trust AI? It's another version of this, the question that takes this crazy broad concept. AI, it's like a billion different fucking things that it could be, from science fiction to like shitty LLMs. Trust is ephemeral. What the fuck? But it puts them together in a way that you can't get at anything that matters. My favorite of these, though, is, what's the meaning of life? Built into that sentence is a presumption that there's already a meaning to be discovered, like an answer somewhere sitting, like a riddle that you have to eat the popsicle stick to get. As long as we do the work, there's answers waiting for us. And so, Angela Collier, one of the better science communicators, is right to be really frustrated with this free will debate.
And all the media I consumed about free will failed to do one thing. It failed to convince me that the question of free will is even an interesting or fun thing to think about at all.
But she's missing a little bit about why it's such a dead end, and I wanted to help add a little bit to her video, because she did a great job for her stuff, but the problem isn't that physicists and philosophers are bad at their jobs. They fucking really are, though, often. The problem is that the concept itself conditions any discussion to be problematic from the jump. So let's start with the common debate of this. Free will or determinism? Do you choose your choices freely, or are your choices purely the illusion of choice, and you are simply enacting the result of a long linear line of interactions that are physically determined? Both of these sides, they treat order like a tree. There are these neat branches where one thing necessarily leads to another in clean lines. Cause A leads to effect B, which leads to effect C, and so on. And this tree, with its pivots and points, is basically the thrust of all these terrible metaverse movies and TV shows and twists we've seen. But even before that, films like Terminator use time travel and destiny to great effect. Groundhog Day, Butterfly Effect, Looper, the entire Marvel filmography, I guess, Run Lola Run, on a better side of these things. All of these act like everything is just billiard balls. They bump into one another, and the question is simple. In that moment, do we believe we are making a choice, or are we doing something that is made to happen by other billiard balls? Do you see the problem I mentioned before, though? Reality isn't billiard balls. I mean, billiard balls aren't even billiard balls, but I'll leave that discussion another fucking time, because forget humans and choice. Let's just talk about, like, discrete causation in a local physics lab, not even in a complex philosophical way, because there's no such thing as discrete causation. Whether it's Brownian motion with its too nightmarish to track causative sort of chain, or how quantum mechanics kind of eliminated the idea that causes come before effects in localized regions, the popular idea of causation that seems to be the physicalist and deeply STEM Lord-centric model of things, it hasn't been science, let alone mainstream science, for decades. The point is, the framework is laid out in the question. And this is the problem when we start down any of these roads. The assumptions that make up the questions aren't dealt with themselves. They're presumed, like an axiomatic in a set. When we ask, does the brain cause decisions or do decisions cause the brain? We're trapped in a framework already, an either or. That's it, closed off. And Angela notices this, to her very much credit, when she says
there is a weird thing I see in these books with philosophers and neuroscientists where they separate you from your body, which is something I just don't understand.
It is weird. And it's weird at like every level, because this is not a small thing. This is probably one of the great challenges we need to overcome in the modern age as humanity. The mind-body dichotomy at the center of how we view ourselves, the world, God, and the rest. Because think about how you actually make decisions. Like, how'd you choose the clothes you wore today? Or how do you act on a date or at work? You don't really consult like an internal command center. Decisions emerge from the whole situation. Your body's chemistry, the room's lighting, phone's notifications, childhood memories, how attractive your date is, conversations you had yesterday, the TV show you watched, a meme you saw.
Decision. Like he talks about your bacteria inside your body and he's like, is that you? Your bacteria does, and it's just like, yeah, because if you took out all the bacteria, I would die.
So what makes your decision? Well, and that's the bigger problem. The question, do we have free will, assumes there's an individual that can have or lack it at all. There's so much wrong with this question. Doing this misses something crucial about how I exist or how any of us actually work at that level. And it's, again, fundamental to how we talk about causation. That stable self, it's not really stable at all. It's actually something that you should be calling metastable. A big boulder on a mountain is stable. It's in the preferred position or state of itself. Basically, gravity is kind of holding it against the ground. That's its preferred state. It's doing fine. If you roll it down a hill or the side of the mountain collapses, it'll roll, but that's not affecting the stability of it. It's not less stable. It's seeking out its preferred place. It's actually still quite stable, even if it breaks and shatters, because all the pieces are then doing the same thing. It's always moving towards its preferred place. Where it's sitting is just because gravity's pulling it against this dirt beneath. We have a stable orbit around the sun, for example, and any change to the Earth or sun actually has really strange counter effects that actually keep that orbit going because it's stable. Stability is returning to a preferred state and always having a preferred state. But have you ever seen a tornado? They're kind of amazing to witness if you're safe. They're terrifying if you're not. Definitely don't just hang out in your backyard in Oklahoma. But there's not really a thing called a tornado. We call it that, and we can identify it as that, so that way we know which direction to run and scream. But it's an important distinction, because a tornado is definitely not stable. It doesn't have a preferred state that it's returning to. Definitely not. It pops up due to like a confluence of crazy forces, and it seems stable for a bit, but then collapses again. Think of a mountainside snowpack that builds up over time in layers and layers. This is not stable. It can collapse into an avalanche at any moment. It can become something else. It is filled with potential to do other things. In fact, it's trying to get out of its form. Go look at a forest. A forest is not stable. A billion factors keep it going. A roaring fire, a terrible drought, or a pest invasion decimate it into grassland without time needed at all. Of course, it can grow back. Maybe, if the forces are right. But it certainly is organized like a forest. And we see forests grow back all the time, just like you. Stability is a thing that's sort of like a pipe dream. Because I'm not talking about like the life you lead, the story you tell, right? I'm talking about the you who's hearing this, the you considering this idea. You're not stable. Some of you are probably definitely not stable, but I more mean it in the metastable sense. In the same way the snowpack, the tornado or forest exists, you also have far more complex set of forces that actually make you into a thing. You don't have a thing that's trying to find a stable space. You are a metastable pattern. Like a whirlpool in a river, right? You maintain a recognizable form while the material content changes within you. The water flowing through the whirlpool now is not the same that was there moments ago, but the pattern persists. Maybe there's algae, maybe there's branches, maybe there's leaves, maybe there's fish. All of this, just like you, your cells, the biological components, everything, it all replaces itself constantly. Your thoughts change, your relationships evolve, but there's something elusive that maintains enough consistency and coherence that we can talk about you over time. What we typically call the self is actually better said, and I kind of like how Klosowski puts it. Klosowski calls it an impulse image. Think of it as like a recurring pattern that gains intensity through repetition, like photo paper, but which itself doesn't really have photo paper. It doesn't have a permanent substance. Each time you appear, it's both the same pattern and a completely new iteration of that pattern over time. This is different than a self that makes choices that free will affirmers are excited to tell you about. This is different from a crude physicalist view that says there's no self at all. There's clearly something there. There's patterns, repetitions, recognizable forms. You feel it. We all feel it. But these patterns are more like standing waves than solid objects. They exist only as long as the right conditions maintain them. And yes, science, when brain scans show activity before conscious awareness, they're revealing how your decisions emerge from these pre-personal processes. But this doesn't mean you're a puppet of determined forces or that there's a crystallized you always there. It means you are the temporary crystallization of those processes into a metastable pattern. Let's say your bladder's filling up. The nerve endings send signals to your brain alongside signals of discomfort of the activity you're doing alongside many, many other things. Maybe you're seeing someone drink water or pour water, or someone's playing with the hose or whatever it is, or like my son, you just can't stop staring at the TV when you want to watch dad play a video game. It happens. You've experienced these signals over and over and over and over every time you've had to pee all your life. And they make this sort of single point happen where you get up and you head to the bathroom. But that insight is that you is all of those layers, not just the conscious moment, not the concrete crystallization, but the pattern. It's a model of how we are. It persists, most certainly, but the free will debate assumes your organized self is the single point in this. And that makes no goddamn sense at all. That's looking at the soul. That's Christianity shit. That organized self, no. What it is a temporary arrangement of the deeper field surfacing. When you make a choice, when any of us make a choice, we're not deploying a mystical free will, and you're also not mechanistically determined. You're actualizing one possibility from this virtual field of what might become. And because of that, everything is always new. You're not choosing. You're dealing with forces that are at play as the threads come together. These threads woven together include your personal history, current situation, body state, countless other factors. As I said before, you are what emerges when those threads temporarily stabilize into a metastable, recognizable pattern. The terrifying and liberating truth is that there's no you to preserve or destroy. There's no you to be forced along or to make a choice. There's just this ongoing process that you're part of, temporarily stabilizing into metastable patterns that we call ourselves, then dissolving back into the field of potential to emerge differently. Hofstadter said it best. You're a strange loop. This isn't nihilistic. It's liberating. This is actual freedom. Once you stop defending a self that doesn't exist as a fixed entity, you can start experimenting with new patterns that might emerge. Instead of asking if you're free, you can ask what new forms of organization are possible, what connections haven't been tried, what hasn't been explored. And this is why I identify with Angela's video Her irritation with these physics grifters mirrors my own with philosophy grifters, who claim to have solved free will in so many complex things. All this actually points to something important. That thing all of those people are doing in this, they're giving you the illusion of stability. That's what they're selling you. It's a salve for a neurotic response to having to tarry with the reality that there's not much there. But the salve isn't actually their answer. The salve is the question. They don't give you an answer very often. They're happy to. Free will and determinism assume stable entities making or being subjected to causal forces. It's a question that puts everything knowable, determinable, easily grasped. It's a conceptual pacifier for brains that can't grow beyond infancy. Because in the real world, everything is constantly new. And if identity itself is metastable, we need to have entirely different questions up front. Uncomfortable questions. Like, what does freedom mean when there's no such thing as an I that is consistent? What does responsibility look like when the you who acts isn't the same as the you who could face consequences? What happens when we stop trying to control outcomes and we start to learn to dance with forces we can't predict and we goddamn need to learn we can't master? These questions right now don't have comforting answers. They're not comforting in themselves, and they don't give you a position to defend or an identity to maintain. They ask you to experiment with forms of life that you have not tried yet, to become sensitive to possibilities you can't imagine, to cultivate capacities for transformation rather than strategies for control. Real freedom isn't the power to choose between predetermined options. It's the capacity to become otherwise than what you are. And that means giving up the fantasy that there is a you doing anything. You are the doing. You are the experimental process itself, temporarily crystallizing into the pattern before dissolving away into nothing, into this creative chaos which forms new things and life again. The question has never been whether there is free or determined will. The question is whether we can stay open to new things that are always coming, or whether we keep building conceptual fortresses to protect identities that were never solid to begin with.